Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with, not Chewie, Barbara Edmonds. Kia ora, Barbara.
Kia ora, nice to be on tonight. I can help you host if you want.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I love that. Just for people who are just tuning in, Chewie has been held up at a family event. He's got relatives over at the moment and they're off doing something, and it was a last minute hold up. So he won't be with us tonight. So Barb, we're going to start the show with you. You can be our Chewie. That means you have to blow your stack at least twice during our conversation. That's the rules.
Okay,
blow the
I'll
foo-foo.
practice.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll practice that. Yeah.
And we've got a bunch of stuff to share with you tonight, whānau. Anyway, we're going to be talking to Barb shortly next about the FamilyBoost package. Then we have a little bit of I've never done this before. There's a little addition we're going to do into the conversation that me and Barb are having. As whānau, you know, Craig Renney has a new podcast called Locked Out with Craig Renney. If you haven't made the connection yet, we are producing the show for him, so we make it for him. Craig is in Australia this week, so me and him sat down. And when I say sat down, you don't see me. I'm in the back room, right? Like of the system we're looking at right now. And we recorded something on Saturday for this week's episode. It's a preview to the budget, and it's a must listen to podcast on Thursday for Craig. We got chatting about the FamilyBoost just as a part of his show. Like, I'd come back, I'd record, I came back, okay, right, we've done that segment. That's interesting. And we started talking for like 10 minutes. And that conversation, Craig gave me just a huge amount of information around the FamilyBoost. And so what I've asked Craig, and he's okay with it, is if we can show that off the cuff chat in his podcast, which has not been played in his podcast, it was between two scenes, that's going to add another element to this. And so we'll do that as well as a part of this conversation. Apparently watching Q&A in the weekend, no one really wants charter schools. I mean, Barb, you can talk to that as well if you want at some stage. And a couple of other bits and bobs as well. There is a really interesting piece of Sky News video going around over the weekend about a former Tory minister, so right-wing minister in the UK, finding out in real time on a television show what a trans man was, and seeing for the first time ever why this bullshit bathroom thing won't work. Like, honestly, it's the conversation we've been having for the whole time we've been doing the show. And you can see finally this right winger go, oh, like in real time in front of the cameras. It's not beautiful to look at because it's disgusting and sad, and the consequences that come with it are horrific. But to see this guy in real time finally learn why this ridiculous culture war bathroom ban thing is not going to work, everyone needs to see it. Hey, Barb, before we start, we normally do a bit of housekeeping and a bit of a catch-up, so why don't we do that now just as we are? How was your weekend? What did you get up to? Anything exciting happening in the Edmonds household with your 19 or 22 children or whatever there is they're floating around?
It's kind of the start of the winter season for sport, so lots of parents across the country will have their little ones starting sport, so we kind of had trainings. Luckily, my son, who plays for a local Colts rugby team, he had a bye, but then we watched the women's game. And to be fair, on the Saturday, I was just catching up on a bit of sleep after a pretty jam-packed Anzac Day. So, you know, Anzac Day is a really important day for local members of parliament to get out there and talk to different parts of their community. So yeah. I was invited to 7 services. Wow. I could only make 4. Only make 4 of them from the dawn ceremony. But yeah, it was. I was in a bit of a recovery mode after a jam-packed Friday. So yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, interesting. Waitangi Day. Yeah, I didn't do much on Waitangi Day. I always, try and do a few things and stop and remember, and did a bit of that, but also had some downtime. I'm working 8 hours a day, 7 days a week at the moment, so it's kind of like I'm not trying to minimize it by saying this, but the lest we forget thing was also a time that if you don't stop and do it, you're kind of not giving it its due sort of importance. So I just stopped all day, and we thought about stuff, and we visited a few places, and just a time for reflection. The other thing I did, I don't know if you can see it, the t-shirt that I'm wearing. My big news from the weekend was old mate Hori, who, if you don't know anything about him, the Hori.co.nz. Yep, his t-shirt turned up, and we believe in a rising tide lifts all boats. You should go and check him out, thehori.co.nz. I got that one because I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan from back in the day. The best era of basketball was the 1990s, which is when I was the biggest fan of all. And my t-shirt turned up over the weekend, so that was some of my big news.
I did make some Anzac biscuits, so did make those on Sunday. Kids started school today.
I saw an advert somewhere that said something like gluten-free Anzacs, the first ones ever to be like mass produced. I didn't look at them, I didn't eat them, but I thought that's obviously they're providing a niche, probably to all those pacifists out there, because only pacifists are scared of gluten, I think. I don't know about that.
Some people actually have, this is my wow moment for you. People actually have gluten intolerance, so it's Kia. Kia have been making them for a long, long time. So big ups to Kia, who has supported the gluten intolerant people out there. So, our brother Greg O'Connor, he's a big advocate for gluten free. So Greg O'Connor, MP for Oharu. So I know for sure that we're always thinking of gluten free options for the bro.
There you go. Marzipan rocks. So it's Kia. Is that the name of the brand, like KIA or KEA? Which sort of Kia?
Like the bird.
KEA, like the bird. There you go, Marzipan. If we can do nothing else, we've given you an answer to a question that you wanted to know. If our rest of our show comes to nothing, you can now go and look up your gluten-free Anzacs. Okay, let's do a couple of things because I've been a little bit slack, but it's okay because it still means that our buffer rainbows are up there, and some orders came in today. Yes, I know, celiac. I know, look, don't jump up and down on me. I know, I was making a joke. See, if I don't make that joke about vegans, no one would have a problem. But as soon as you say gluten-free, then all of a sudden they come out of the woodwork, other than the vegans, which will now come out of the woodwork. So I had a really busy day around town today. I went to my Te Reo course and I didn't get to the post shop, which means I'm going to the post shop tomorrow, which means I'm making my order tomorrow, which means if you do still want to get those buffer hoodies, the rainbow ones and t-shirts, which are all 10% off still, this is actually going to be the last day. I know I said Sunday would be the last day, but because I haven't got to the post shop yet, this is going to be the last day. So for people who are interested in those ones, and we know what happens as soon as they go away, next week I get a flood of emails going, are they going to come back? Well, this is your moment to get the buffer rainbow hoodies and tees. Last night, tomorrow when I go to the post shop, I'll be shutting it all down and ordering the merch for that one. Also, big thanks to all of our patrons, our lovely patrons that help us put things together and pay for bills and that sort of thing. If you want to be a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hero News, just like it says on the bottom of the screen, and we'll be screaming at you for the entire show. Hey, Barb, one question before we kind of start the organised conversation. Is mana one of the electorates that's disappearing? I think it's so just before we do the kind of official talk, there's word that the Wellington region is losing an electorate and mana is the one to go. What does that mean for you, for Labour and for the list, those kind of three things together?
Yeah, so technically three electorates, which is currently Otaki, Mana and Oharu are gone, and they merge into two new electorates, which will be called Kinapiru towards the south and then Kapiti towards the north. Effectively, it's from Otaki all the way down to Paremata, which is part of Porirua. Yep. And then it effectively picks up from sort of Papakowhai, covers all of Aotea, and then heads south, east and west Porirua, and heads south down to Johnsonville. So it's a really big change. And, for like the likes of Greg O'Connor and myself, we're both electorate MPs for Oharu and for Mana respectively. It's huge. Like, we were both quite sad about it because you get to know your villages and you get to know your people and you get to know your electorate. What that means, though, for Labor is Greg and I have both said we're not going to compete against each other for the seat selection. So you can, we're good friends and we're very respectful, and that the right person needs to stand for the right seat. The submissions actually closed today to the public for the Electoral Commission to have your say about where those boundaries go. Yep. And then technically by August, we should have the new electorate boundaries for the area down here in Wellington. And then Labor will go through its selection process to selecting the right candidate for both Kapiti, to run in Kapiti, which also includes, we've got an Otaki LEC as well, but Kapiti and for Kinapuru. So the big change, if you're from down
Wellington,
where we are.
Because there's still Hutt Valley, there's still Wellington Central with the Greens. Those are all untouched. It's just a bit further north that's getting moving around.
So Hutt South has a little bit of a change. They pick up the Newlands area, so over the hill a little bit from them. So Hutt South extends to there. And the reason why basically they had to get rid of an electorate is because there's been a depopulation of Ohariu, Wellington Central and Rongotai. So obviously, logistically, you start from the bottom of the North Island and you work your way up, and that's how they've gone with the numbers and, trying to work out the boundary the best way possible.
Chewie's not here, so I can do the tangents, I guess. I've always had this belief, or thought's better than belief. I used to do talkback and you'd constantly get callers phoning in going, right, we only need 99 MPs. We should go back to 99 MPs. But if you have a look per capita, we've actually right now got fewer MPs than we've ever had per capita. And if we were going to have the same number of MPs to today's population, which we had when there was 99, it would be like 145 MPs. Do you think that there's enough MPs in New Zealand per capita, or do we need more, or is it about right? Do you have a personal position on that, or is there a Labor position on that?
Bro, you're asking the wrong person. You need to ask the public that, you know what I mean? Like, the public clearly has a view around the number of seats in Parliament, and in either way, if we're going to say, well, we want to increase it so it's a bit more fairer in the sense of where population growth is, etc., then you really need to go out to the public with that sort of proposal, because it's quite a big step, right? But then you look at, for example, the Wellington region. We have something like close to 80 elected representatives across councils, 6 different councils, yet for a population of around 450. So there is some disproportion, but it really, to have that sort of proposal, you need to go to the rest of the country and see what they think about it. Otherwise, we're dealing with what we've got, which is 120 up to 122 seats. The other element which I didn't speak about is that the South Island has to have 16 seats. So that also means that why the North Island was definitely going to lose a seat, given the growth.
Yeah. All right. That was very politically answered. Well done for staying on the fence and not actually sharing anything with their Barb. Well done. Fantastic.
Hey, man, I'm a servant of the people.
I want to, Peter says, just straight over before we get into the chat, I'd like to see the number of MPs increase to about 150. Well, that would be the same per capita as when we had 99. I did the numbers not long ago on the show. I think it might have been 145 or something. Kiwi Bird says, money to buy popcorn for budget day. Oh, thanks. Money for us to buy. Oh, nice. Well done. Kiwi Boy also says, vegan here, you summoned me. Yes, I know. Come out of the woodwork. There we go. Right. Hey, let's have a look at this conversation, because I get the sense that the national, and I mean national, New Zealand's news media is not giving this story the attention it deserves. It started last week when we found out that 249 families have consistently been receiving the full $75 a week FamilyBoost rebate for ECE costs. It was a key plank of National's tax cuts package. Finance Minister Nicola Willis, and she was quite demure when she said this. That kind of, we're going to this and we're going to do it, all went away when she was kind of like, we're not quite sure. And it was a much calmer Nicola Willis last week when she had to admit that about half the families, which is 50,000, were getting the rebate as opposed to the 100,000 they promised. But even worse, in my opinion, than that, they were saying 21,000 families would receive $75 a week. 21,000 and it's 249. Now, I did the maths on that. That's 99.988% out. So 0.012% of what they said it would be. Now, one thing we didn't talk about last week, Barb, was the other part of this. I'm sure you've got these numbers in your head. 50 families, I think they said 3,000. I think the CTU said 3,000, actually. We'll check that. 50 families are also receiving National's full $250 a fortnight tax break. So there's only fewer than 50 families who are getting that, which all ties into this 249. Was it 3,000 families? Am I right? Were they saying 3,000 families would get that, or did they never release a number on that?
I saw the 50 families that the CTU came out with in Radio New Zealand last week. I mean, the main thing is this is a capital F for fail. This was their flagship 100%. Election policy, and they failed big time. But what's interesting, I mean, as you say, the minister looked a bit more demure.
Yeah.
Like I'd gone that night to church because the Pope had died the week before. So I joined our Catholic communities here in Wellington. And even they were talking to me about it after Mass had finished. They're like, oh, we just saw you on the news. And they were like, isn't that terrible, like what had happened? And then I had Anzac Day the next day. And the amount of people that had come up to me and were saying the same thing as well was just like, oh, they failed that tax cut thing. It's a huge failure. Like, they promised so much, and the fact that, whether it's CTU numbers that you use, are actually only 50 unique families get the full 250 tax cut, or whether it's the written parliamentary question that we got, which actually showed only 249 families received it, it's still a fail. Like you said, it's like, what, 1%? And so the Minister of Finance should be looking like she's got egg on her face, and we've been saying this for the last couple of quarters, because this is quarter 3 or 4 that happened, and we've been saying it both at the end of quarter 1 and at the end of quarter 2, like, you need to do something about this. And, we were basically getting the heat for it, saying, well, it's only just started. And it's like, no, we're now up to quarter 3 and it's still a failure. And the fact that only because we came out with the information saying they've failed, that Nicola Willis has actually said, oh yeah, we probably should have a look at it. It's like, that's just wrong. If we hadn't called it out, would you have just done nothing?
Yeah, there's two numbers here, yeah? And I think that we don't want to conflate them. The two numbers are, National promised $250 a fortnight as a tax rebate. And there's purely the ECE rebate, which was up to $75 a week. So the up to $75 a week is 250 families. But the ones who are getting the full 250, which will be people getting the ECE rebate and the other tax breaks and that, is only 50 families. So what that means, and this actually comes up in the Craig conversation, but not a part that you and I are going to look at. What that means is a subset of the 249 families. So you've got 249 families who are getting the maximum ECE rebate. So there's a subset of them that'll be getting the 250 a fortnight, and that's only 50 families. I'm pretty sure when they were pushed on it during election time, I should check this, they said 3,000 families would be receiving that 250 a fortnight. But I don't have those numbers to hand, so let's focus on the ECE rebate. The ECE rebate, if you were a manager at a business and you got given this job, you've got a nationwide plan, manager of this department, and this is your objective, to get 21,000 customers engaged in this plan, and you came back at the end of 2 or 3 quarters and you'd reached 250, you would be fired so quickly. You'd be on fire. You are so fast going out the door. And I don't know who or how. I can see that they're starting to blame IRD for this, but this is so bad, 99.988% wrong, that this is a fireable offence for someone. Someone needs to take responsibility for this because it's that bad. If they're out by 10% or 20%, you'd be like, well, we could still criticise them for them because we're biased and we hate them all. I'm just joking. But 99.988% out, that should not be survivable for whoever's responsible for it.
But whoever is responsible is Nicola Willis and Christopher Luxon, because if we've got the receipts which showed during the election on their FamilyBoost tax package, the actual, the paperwork that they had done, they had said 130,000 families would get FamilyBoost. So 130,000 families. And then obviously when they got into government, IRD did the best job they had with the information they had, and they said, well, maybe 100,000 families. But nevertheless, it still sits with them. Ultimately, this is the thing that also really annoys me, is take responsibility for it. It's your policy. It's your failure. Sure, IRD may have come up with estimates. However, your estimates was worse. It was 130,000 versus 100,000. And you're blaming officials who cannot speak for themselves. And like, I've worked for IRD, I've worked for revenue ministers, both blue and red, and I've been in those offices when these types of policies and discussions, for, tax packages for governments happen. And the really key thing is that if you're the minister, if I was in her shoes as the Minister of Finance, you usually have fortnightly meetings between Treasury and IRD. You'd be drilling it in every fortnightly meeting, saying, how are we going with that uptake? What are we doing? Do we need to put more resources into getting greater advertising about this? What is the difficulty that families are having with receiving this entitlement? Because this is what it is. It's an entitlement. So, if Christopher Luxon can get his entitlements easily, why can't our family?
Yep, he's entitled to his entitlements. He told us that enough times before he then cancelled it because it was too embarrassing for him. So that bodes the question, if they should have been talking about this every 2 weeks, have they? And have they just kind of hoped and prayed this wouldn't come out and wouldn't go away? What are your thoughts?
I think they just hoped and prayed that this wouldn't come out. But the thing is, that's what written parliamentary questions are for, right? And that's what the opposition, our job as the Labour Party, is for, is to hold them to account. So again, I believe, given that they've, the last couple of times that we've brought this to light, that they're like, oh, it's great that the Labour Party is trying to advertise our policy. And it's like, yes, because that's what you promised. And people should be entitled to what you promised. I mean, I remember during the election campaign, a room full of workers basically saying, well, we're not going to, yes, we traditionally vote for Labour, but we're not going to vote for you because we're getting a $250 tax cut. And that was rubbish. Absolutely rubbish.
It's because it's actually one step worse, or one step more serious than what you're saying, because people would have voted for that. So actually, it's basically a verbal contract, in my mind, a way of thinking about it. You've made a contract with these families that they would be better off, whatever it is, whether it's school lunches, they will be cheaper and better. It was always, they will be this and better. They will be as good as, or they'll be better. We don't need that ferry, but we'll have something as good as not better. And people choose to vote. People in Dunedin would have cast their vote because, due respect, Barb, Labour came out and watered down a little bit the hospitals that were down here, and then Luxo came in and went bigger than it'll ever be, the promises that was made on first day. And then when they get in, they're like, we're actually going to cut it back further. So if I do feel quite strongly about this, if you're going to make a promise, why are you allowed to get out of that promise, politician, when if I make a promise with my business, someone can go, well, that's a verbal contract, I'm going to hold you to it. Like legally, why are they able just to go, nah, sorry, we're just changing that? I mean, that's for any politician. Look, let's be honest, every political party does it from time to time. So why? How come that's able to just be turned away from so easily?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that's best put to them, how they can get away with it. But, our job in opposition is to highlight this constantly over and over again. They failed in quarter 1, they failed in quarter 2, we're now at quarter 3, and it's a huge failure. But more importantly, it's bloody tough for our families. Like I'm in Porirua, we are an area that one is most people are hired by the government, and then the second largest employer in our area is the construction sector. So we've had a double whammy for a lot of our families. But when I spoke to the Wellington Kindergarten Association on Thursday, which is whānau Manaki, they have around 6,000 families. And they support them as much as they can with low ECE costs, because they want children to go to ECE, to their kindies, because that's the best way to get a good start for kids. So what they had said in the media stand-up is, so they estimate that around 2,500 families could apply for Family Boost. That's because they pay fees. On the first quarter, only 7% of that 2,500 families actually asked them for their invoices, because to get Family Boost, you have to pay it up front, get at the end of the quarter your invoices, and then make a claim via the IRD system. So they said only 7% in the first quarter got it or asked for invoices. The second quarter, only 6% of those families asked for those invoices. And then for the last quarter, the quarter just gone, only 5%.
Wow.
So for them, it's clearly for families who are time poor and the bureaucratic nightmare that this is for some families. Some families find it easy, but a lot of families who probably won't, and clearly because there's low uptake, this is really difficult for them, but yet they need that money.
And it's also going to put work on the daycare centres as well, because if you're anything like me, I've got doing my receipts. Oh shit, where does that one go? I'll go back to the daycare and ask them to print it again, because so this is these guys that want to get rid of bureaucracy and stuff, who are adding layers and layers and layers to it. The other thing, now I'm a little bit ignorant to this, Barb, so you can correct me. $75 a week versus 20 hours of free childcare. Now that means to me, that's $3.50 per hour of childcare, because 20 into, it's not even that. Oh, no, it is. 20 into 75 goes $3.50. It would seem to me, being ignorant, not being in that world, that $20 or 20 hours free childcare has more of a value to it, literal financial value, than $75 a week. Or does it all kind of come out in the wash?
Well, that's part of the problem, right? With Family Boost, there is no wash up. So
Right.
if maybe at the end of quarter four and you don't know, because you've got lumpy income, maybe you're a casual family, one quarter you're over the threshold and then the next quarter you're under it, there's no
Yep.
way that you can at the end of the year then actually get that money back for what you were entitled to. It doesn't work like that, Family Boost. So we've been saying to the government, just fix it. Figure out the way to make it easier for families. We would have gone with, as we had during the election, that extension of 20 hours free to 2-year-olds. And what that would have meant is there's already a system up and running, already well understood by providers. They are already doing it anyway, and they're still doing it for the 3, 4, 5-year-olds. But actually, now they've got this additional Family Boost for that 2-year-old segment. So there's 2-year-olds that have Family Boost, and then if you've got a 3 or 4-year-old, that goes under SCE 20 hours free. So just, fall on your sword and basically figure out, okay, maybe extending it to 2-year-olds was the better thing to do. Let's not do Family Boost. Let's just do that. Yeah, we'll take some stick from the opposition, but actually we're here to serve New Zealanders. We promised this. We know now that it is an easier way to do it. So just do it. Just handle the stick that you get from us, because actually in the end, these are families that need every dollar.
Hey, and look, Barb, all cards on the table. People know where this podcast sits politically and stuff. But if this was you guys in Parliament and this had happened, we'd be asking exactly the same questions. And I wonder, have you ever been sitting around a cabinet table or a table where this kind of monumental issue has come up, and how did you guys handle it? Or how would you? I know it's easy from opposition to go, we'd do things the right way, wouldn't we? Sometimes it might be a bit different when you're in the seat of power, so to speak. If you guys were in there, what do you think would happen? Or have you seen something like this monumental size balls up happen, and how did you handle it?
So first of all, you don't wait till it comes out in media. Like the fact that it came out in media that only 249 families were getting the full Family Boost entitlement, and that fewer than half were actually getting Family Boost. Like, you would be, as a minister, like I said, this would be something that you'd want in your weekly report, and when you have that fortnightly meeting between revenue and treasury officials, you would be pushing really hard so that it never got to the point where it had to be through your opposition and media hounding you to say whether you've actually got it right or not. So that's the first thing you do, is you deal with it straight away. You're proactive about it. The second thing that you would do as well is you'd really consider, you have to go back to when they first came into Parliament, because I'm pretty sure they would have got advice from officials saying probably would have been easier just to extend 20 hours free because it's already a set up system. But if you don't want to listen to that and you still want to do Family Boost, then you're going to have to handle the heat if it doesn't work. And so the fact that it hasn't either gone yet to cabinet, I don't know, because the fact is it only came out in the media last week on Thursday because of our written parliamentary questions. You'd be asking a whole lot of questions if you're in the Prime Minister's seat and if you're in those Chief of Staff seats saying, how did this happen? Why did you not tell Cabinet? And why are we only hearing about this through the media? You know, those are the questions you'd be drilling both the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Revenue over. Like, it's just not good enough. And so I don't understand how it got to this point where you're now at Q3 and it's still a failure.
Yeah. And look, love you guys. It was fun catching up at Waitangi and stuff. But when you guys are back in power, we will be asking these same questions, just so everybody's clear who's watching from the cheap seats at the moment. Hey, now this bit is, I actually think that this is information that's not out there yet. I think this is an exclusive, and I'm going to have to explain how it all happened, people. So I know this looks a bit weird because I'm sitting there with red lights on in the background. So what happens with the system that we're working is I'm recording Craig. So I basically do this to Craig. Imagine that Barb's recording me. She's in charge. And then I do this. And then Barb's in the background still, but I'm not on screen. So that's how I record Craig, right? So I'm off screen and I'm recording him when he's doing his podcast. At the end of the segment, I pop back in, which is why none of these lights or anything are on because I'm not supposed to be on camera. I'm just chatting to him about his next segment. And I brought up the Family Boost. And just in conversing with Craig about Family Boost, he shared something with me that should be leading the news tomorrow, right? So TVNZ journalists, we know you watch. This should be question. Have you got the Prime Minister tomorrow morning? TVNZ breakfast? If you do, this needs to be a question to him. Craig talks to me, and I'm only going to play half of this so Barb can comment on it because the second half is a bit less focused on the Family Boost. But Craig tells me why Nicola Willis's promise last week to we'll sort this out after the budget not won't happen, but can't happen. So it can't happen. And I start this conversation, as you can see, I'm leaning back, I'm not near my microphone. And at some point I go like this and I lean in because in my head I'm going, oh shit, this is good content. Maybe I could use this on Monday night. You'll see me do it. So let's have a listen to what Craig has got to say about how Nicola Willis has got this so wrong. And then Barb, we can watch it in the background, then we'll bring you back in. Here we go. And sorry again about the casualness. It's a bit weird, but it was literally an off-the-cuff conversation, which Craig has given me permission to use if anyone was wondering. That's it. That's the intro.
Yep.
It's funny. We said on Friday night they were talking about what were they talking about? What were they talking about? They were talking about the Family Boost. They're out by 99.988%. 249 families instead of 21,000. And there was you've just explained something, and there was a very, I thought, ominous line where the news report said they'll be addressing it in the weeks after the budget. And we're like, oh yeah, but that budget will be written. So of course.
So
a little side note, which you'll get in Craig's podcast on Thursday. He's obviously said the budget is already written because it has to go out to presses and stuff. So the budget will be written, which means nothing else will be able to be added to the budget. So in my mind, I'm kind of going, well, of course they said after the budget because this year's budget coming out 22nd of May will already have been decided because it's got a bunch of things. So obviously I thought, well, that's why they're going to do it after the budget because they can't include it in the budget. Craig actually gives the worst information about that in the weeks after the budget. And we're like, oh yeah, but that budget will be written. So of course.
So I have a bit of an inside scoop for you on that. Technically, you can't do what Nicola has said she's going to do.
What was that?
The budget will have been written and the spending that was going to happen, because it hasn't happened, has been recorded in the books. As a consequence, the books will look better than they would do, even though the Minister of Finance has said that we're going to make sure the money is spent in the future.
Hang on. So So let me get this clear. So because they budgeted for 21,000 families to be able to get this full $75 a week, and only 249 families got it, that means it's like if I had a savings account that I was saving for a car, and I had $500,000 in it because I have a really flash car, and I took 500 out because I was out by that much, then in the bank there'd be all that leftover money from me buying the second-hand Corolla rather than the Ferrari. That's basically what it is.
Importantly, the Treasury scoops all of that back and says, that belongs to us now.
Okay.
Right? Now, if you say, but I'm going to spend it, the Treasury says, no, you can't. That's in the past. And as a consequence, if you want to spend it, that's new spending in the future. That has to come out of the future year's allowances. So that means you're actually, in the real world, what you're doing is you're cutting spending in the future to pay for the promise that you promised in the past.
Okay. So when you say, because Nicola has said, or well, the news report said that they were going to address it in the weeks after the budget. Why do you mean she can't do that? Is that because there's no money going to be allotted for the weeks after the budget to do anything about it?
That you can't retrospectively go into the accounts. So what the accounts will say is, here is a sum of money. Here is the accounts as at the 1st of April, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She'll say, well, we had this money that we didn't spend. Treasury's recorded the fact it didn't spend it, so the accounts look better than they should do.
Yeah.
She then says, I want to spend that money, but the money isn't there.
You're right.
Because the money has been absorbed, because in the accounts, it's not been expensed. So as a consequence, in the future, if you want to spend that money, you've got to choose to spend that money, which means it has to come from the future year's allowances, which means it acts just like a cut in spending in the future. It's like a pre-commitment in the future. So she's actually cutting to pay for the mistake she made in the past.
So the 249 families rather than 21,000, as I said, they're wrong by over 99%, 99.988. I did the numbers. 249 divided by 21,000. For them to fix that error, fix their mistake, they have, remember, this is the party of business, by the way, the guys that know their numbers, they're going to have to cut something else that they've already budgeted for because that money's not there to make it more available to people. So my little silly analogy of a $500,000 car, it's like the difference is, it's like I saved up let's say a house. I saved up $500,000 for a house, and then I decided to go renting, and I only spent $5,000 of that money. It's like, it's what you're saying is then the other $495,000 is gone. It's been absorbed by whatever. So it physically, well, even on the ledger, doesn't exist anymore. Nope. And if they want to redress it and make it easier for these 20,750 families to come onto it, they have to find that money from elsewhere because that was supposed to be of last year's budget. And now, so that was the thing. That was supposed to be spent in the last year, and because it hasn't, it's gone. So to spend it in the next year, they need to find it elsewhere, which means more revenue or more likely cuts. Have I got that right?
You're exactly right. That is. And so it acts, because it acts directly like a cut, right? Because you're having to find the money, right? Because it's the same money, right? Because it acts like a cut. You're going to cut health or education or something else in order to pay for the money you should have pushed out of the door at a certain point in time. And because the books have already been written, you can't go backwards.
I'm going to be sick, Craig. This government, mate. And just so you know, at what point in this conversation did you realize I'd started an interview and I'm going to use it on Monday night? Did you realize that when I got closer to the microphone? There you go. Look, there is another 5 minutes that we do continue to talk about it, but we kind of go elsewhere and ask a few more what do you think questions. So I know you were all watching a rodeo clown think in real time there. I apologize about that. But there is a few ways they can do this. That means they can cut to find the money. They can borrow to find the money. They can grow revenue to find the money. We all know they're not going to grow revenue. That's not the MO of this thing. Or the last option is they cannot do what they're saying they're going to do now. So therefore they don't need any more money. Barb, that you know numbers. Is that pretty clear what Craig said? We're all clear on that. People in the chat are swearing and stuff, so they obviously get what's going on. But this again, I started this interview by saying this hasn't been talked about enough. This point should be leading all the news bulletins tomorrow, don't you think?
Yeah, well, they should be asking the Minister of Finance, like, when did she find out that there was going to be an underspend? And did she make decisions on it before the budget moratorium, which we are now in? Basically, budget moratorium means you can't fiddle with the accounts basically from Easter, 6 weeks before the budget, because Treasury are finalising their forecasts. But effectively what Craig said in even more simpler terms is the way that FamilyBoost is set up, if you don't spend the money, it goes back to the middle. And if you want to spend the money, then you need to find the money for it. It's a new spending initiative. It's a new allowance. So they may extend. So we'll find out from budget how they've managed to deal with that money. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if, whether she's made any decisions since Thursday, since knowing this had hit the media, like what her office or what Treasury will be doing, given the minister has now said to the public, oh, we can't do anything now because of budget, but we will fix it later. So it's quite clear.
With what?
They weren't going to do anything. They weren't going to do anything, but because they've been caught out, they've had to respond to it. So it's just, again, just the government who's supposedly better economic managers not understanding how their own legislative authority for FamilyBoost is set up and not basically understanding how the government accounts work.
So just to reiterate as well, which I didn't, because sometimes you hear people saying, oh, there's a $3.2 billion budget, and you go, oh, cool. And they go over 10 years. So it doesn't actually quite, it's a bit more difficult to figure out. But for this, that 21,000 families budget was for the year that's just about to finish. So that's not like over 3 years. That's for until I guess this budget is done. So that's done, that's gone, that's not able to roll over. And I guess, Barb, from a fiscal point of view, if they had have known this, say 3 months ago, they could have rolled something into the budget, but they seem to be caught unawares, which implies they didn't know.
Well, it's again comes to how they've set up FamilyBoost. So a real simple way to set it up. I mean, they've basically said this is the FamilyBoost bucket. The bucket is round and it's X deep. So that's the way it's been set up via legislation. It's this round, X deep. Doesn't matter how much money is needed for it, the amount. It's actually the scope of the appropriation or how the bucket looks. So the fact is that they haven't spent all the money. So Treasury's gone in, put their hand into the bucket and said, thanks, all that money now, we're coming back to the centre. And now if the government which is why she would have said after budget, if she wants to basically expand FamilyBoost after the budget, she's going to have to find the money for it for budget 2026. So another pre-commitment, just like the last budget where they had to do a pre-commitment for the cancer drugs, have to find a pre-commitment to budget 2026, which means ultimately, yes, there'll be a cut somewhere else to pay for it.
Yeah.
Unless you say maybe new revenue, but I doubt it.
And as Clint says, nicely in the chat, Clint, the books will look artificially better in budget,
Artificially
which is what Craig just said. The underspent FamilyBoost equals lower debt, but it's an illusion because the cost of fixing FamilyBoost won't be accounted for. Yeah, and I think maybe we should have just read Clint's message and not have to done that last 9 minutes of talk, because that's basically what we've covered for the last 9 minutes. Yeah, look, I'm not trying to beat up like an exclusive for BHM, but that's a huge story. That's a huge story, and it needs to be talked about. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to do something with it in the house, eh? So beware, Nicola, they're coming for you this week. Is there anything else we need to know, Barb? Is there anything else you want to like let us know about? What have we missed? Is there any other fish hooks we haven't quite seen?
No, it's going to be interesting. Again, like I said, we've got obviously more questions going through. We've got an opportunity to actually question the minister over the next couple of weeks. We've got 3-week parliamentary sitting week coming up. But the fact is, ultimately, this is a huge failure by the government. This was their flagship policy. Like, flagship policy was FamilyBoost, and they've stuffed it up. And now they're saying, oh, we'll fix it later. But then it's going to come at an ultimate cost to somewhere else.
Yeah. Before we sign off with you, Barb, there's a couple of questions and stuff in the chat. Are you okay for a couple of them?
Yeah, every time, man. Every time. I'm always prepared for them.
Okay, here we go. And look, I think people are asking policy questions. I could probably answer them, which is, well, we have to see what happens when the election time comes around. But Andrew, thanks for the Jubet, wants to know, will Labor come out against PPP? The infrastructure speech was like, when it's suitable, but it's always more expensive. Labor should oppose neoliberalism and show its belief in a functional state. I know it's quite difficult to answer an absolute answer for a question that has some nuance to it in reality. But Andrew wants to know, I guess, the thoughts around PPPs.
Yeah, for $10, Andrew, you can definitely have our thoughts for,
Hang on.
PPP.
Does that mean I have to donate that to you now? How does that work?
Yeah, maybe you should. You can donate it to my campaign. No.
Right.
But ultimately, the thing with PPPs, it's a form of procurement, right? It's only one form of procurement. And countries across the world use PPPs in different ways, and sometimes they call them different things.
Yeah.
The ultimate thing, though, for Labor going into any PPP, and we've already said where we wouldn't do a PPP, so that's for obviously hospitals, schools, and prisons. You know, those things where we have a fiduciary duty of care, where we have to care for people within the government's, that's our job to do it. There needs to be what's called a value for money assessment. That is a normal thing that should be done. So the value for money assessment shows whether it's cheaper for the government to do it with just a different procurement type of contract or through a PPP. That is the easiest way to figure out whether a PPP will be more expensive or not. And that's something that Labor has said to the government, you need to ensure that that happens, which is why that framework that we signed up to said that value for money assessment happens.
All right. There's not really any questions, but there's a few comments, and there are comments around our conversation, so I'll put them out while you're here. Rob says they can't find $4 billion for ferries and $9 billion for military when they had no money in the budget. Heartless, thoughtless idiots. Let me just say, Craig's podcast on Thursday is a pre-budget podcast, and he breaks down the numbers of how much money the government's got and what they've promised to do. So if you want to see those numbers in real time, Thursday morning when you all get up for brekkie, Craig's podcast will be there both here on these channels, here on YouTube, and also Apple and Spotify as well. It's must appointment listening or something, Barb. You'd have to get it over breakfast on Thursday morning. Mike says the amount of people who voted based on that tax cuts would be significant. So where's the accountability? That's kind of what I'm saying. I'm like, I always wonder why. This is not even a New Zealand thing, but political parties are allowed to lie as a part of their election things, and also why they can't be held more accountable than just at the ballot box for promises that don't get fulfilled. I don't know about that one. Finally, Gold says it's almost like the NACT NZ are bad at math. Yeah, there you go.
Maybe you can, Pat, you can give your calculator that you use to calculate those numbers to the Minister of Finance. She needs a calculator.
Not even a flash one, just a normal cell phone. Hey, we're done. Look, thanks for being with us, mate. We've been doing this for 45 minutes. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Anything upcoming we need to know about? What's happening in the House this week? Anything exciting?
So we're in recess this week. So that means that Parliament's not sitting. We will go into a 3-week sitting block, which will be the big sort of lead up to budget. You'll see lots of pre-budget announcements from ministers, but like today, I saw one with Erica Stanford, and it's good. Someone asked her, well, where's that money coming from? And she said, oh, no, you'll have to wait till budget. So, be really cynical with these pre-budget announcements, because what you'll hear from Craig on Thursday is a true breakdown of those pre-commitments. So that should be the number one question that people should be thinking about is where's this money coming from? And what am I going to lose as a result of it?
And what's the point in making an announcement in the lead up to budget when you know the first kind of question is going to be, how do you pay for it? And you're going to be, wait and see. So you're making an announcement in a situation where you're not then going to answer any questions about the announcement. What's the point? Maybe that's why they make them, so they don't have to answer them.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe to make sure that that Nicola Willis is, the guiding light for just budget, and no other ministers take the Minister of Finance's glory on budget day.
You come back and see us on budget night?
Yeah, for sure. I'll put you in the diary, man.
Yeah, man. Cool. All right. Barbara Edmonds, MP for Mana, and after the election, you'll be MP for... No?
Don't know
Okay.
yet.
I thought I might try and trap you there, but it didn't work, did it? Hey,
I'm
thanks,
still
man. It's
gonna
always,
be here.
it's always a
Don't
pleasure.
say.
Love having you on board, and we'll talk to you again super soon, eh?
Thanks, bro. Catch you later.
Barbara
Thank you.
Edmonds. See you then. All the best. A couple of other super chats. Oh, look, just again, I know, I've said this 5 times. That there is really big news. Like, if you ever want to share stuff around, that'll be a good one to share around. That Nicola Willis can't address the shortfall that has happened, whether you want to blame them or not, that has happened in FamilyBoost without either cutting something else, borrowing something more, or raising revenue, which we know they don't want to do. They seem to be running away from raising revenue with tax cuts and all sorts of other things as well. So basically either cutting or borrowing because there's no budget for it. And the budgets are done for the next year. So she's either lying or she doesn't understand how the system works, which is, funnily enough, a question that I asked Craig in the second part of that conversation, which we'll get to in a sec. I'll just do a couple of these super chats now. Alice says, here's some money. I'm just happy to be back in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Oh, thanks, Ella. I was about to say, I hope you go away more, then you can give us more money. No, I'm just kidding. It was a joke. Late fee, evening all, says Ben. Okay, let's do that, shall we? Let's just go back to Craig, because I do actually ask him that question in the second part of this conversation. I say to him, is she lying or is she just bad at this? Chewie's favourite line, they're bad at this. So this has got about 4 minutes to go, and it does continue on this conversation with a few more opinion pieces put in. So let's get to this, then we'll get to some more of the stuff we're going to talk about.
This is the challenge, is that essentially because of the way the Public Finance Act works and because of the way the accounting works, that money has disappeared. It's gone, right? Because when the debt figure says it's 81 billion, I'm going to pick a number at random, 100 billion, right? If you say, well, hang on a second, we're going to take that money that we would have spent and we're going to move it across that year, well, you can't because it's in the debt figure. So either you're going to borrow more money or your debt figures are all wrong and your entire budget's wrong.
Can I want to know one thing from this. Thanks for contributing to BHN this week, by the way. I want to know one more thing about this. Is she lying, or does she actually not know this? Is she bad at this? What is your opinion? Just an opinion on that.
I think she's bad at this. I think
so she doesn't know.
I don't think she understands the public finance plumbing, for want of a better phrase. So when you make decisions in time is really important. How you make decisions is really important, and there's a complex way in which you can do it. And it's an art, right? It's not straightforward. It takes a while to learn, right? Now I'm lucky because I worked at the Treasury, so I got imbued with all of this at a point in time, right? But there's a when you say, oh, we're going to make sure people get the money, it's like, fine. If during a normal period of time, if we have this conversation in September, that's fine. But because you're doing it just before a budget, and because the budget's written, you stuffed.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, is that you can't. So that's what I mean by, I don't think she's very politically adept.
Yeah.
No doubt. But what she's not very adept at is understanding the mechanics of how the public finance system works.
I don't know if I believe you, Craig. I mean, an English major not knowing the economics of the country, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
To be fair, Bill English, English major, did, but Bill used to work at the Treasury as well. So, there's, but what to me, the bigger question it asks to me that I would like to know the answer to is, when did she know? Because if she knew a long time ago that this wasn't the case, and by the way, there's been written parliamentary questions every week on this.
Right.
So she should have known. Yeah. If she knew, then why didn't she fix the system a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, so that the numbers would be in the budget?
So that brings me back to that same question. So you're still saying it's an ineptitude rather than nefarious action? Because if she knew it's nefarious action, you're kind of implying, how did she not know? Is that much ineptitude?
Well, this is it. It's either incompetence or something else. Now, personally speaking, from experience of working in the beehive, it's 99.9995% incompetence rather than rather than malice, right?
And can you remind me again why she didn't want you to come to the Haifu lockup? What was that all about?
So this is what I mean by sort of these things are hard, right? And so when you just chuck something out there, it has real world consequences, and the Treasury really does write it all down and goes away and makes the numbers work. Because she said what she said, that essentially will act as a future spending commitment, and as a consequence, she can't reach backwards inside the accounts without changing the accounts. So you can't go backwards in time and get $100 million without the debt level going up by $100 million, without Obergall going down by $100 million.
We should get back onto your show now, Craig.
But very happy to talk about this on Monday. I said, well, not on Monday because I'll be in Australia.
Well, no, but look, in all seriousness, I'm recording this. Are you okay if I use this? Is there anything here which because you said you got an exclusive. Well, what did you say? So inside, is there anything here that can't be used?
No, there's nothing here that can't be used.
Because I think that's actually quite funny as well, that me and you were recording your show and we started talking about the thing and playing it with this is all your branding on it. If you're okay with it, I'll totally use this on Monday's show. I think I don't know if you did actually pick it up, but I was. Yeah. That's why I started to use it.
I trust you to make me not look like a dick. But
you sound really good. It sounds really good. So, but let's leave that. I've actually talked to Barb as well about coming on, because I actually don't think the media is picking up this fucking at all. It's like, by the way, there's one more point to come. That's why I've left this in. Like, imagine in the place of business, or imagine if Labor was out, they were wrong by 99.988%. And she comes on, and you know what? Have you noticed? She's being very demure. Oh, we expected more, but we'll look at it. It's like, no. Sorry, my dear.
Also, this was a policy, and you can record this bit, this was a policy that during the election campaign, right, they talked about the average family would get $250 a fortnight. That was Christopher Luxon's words. Then the CTU did some work, we did some work, and we discovered that it was around 3,000 families would get that amount of money. It's now 249 that are getting the maximum from the FamilyBoost. So the 250 number is a subset of the 249, which means it's not 3,000. It's not the average number. It's probably closer to zero. Is the number of families that are receiving the full $250 a fortnight package that was promised as part of the election campaign.
There you go, team. Exclusive for you. So just so you're clear on that last bit, I said it to Barb in the conversation as well. The 249 families that are getting the full $75 a week ECE, that family, some of those families will also be getting the full $250 a fortnight, $125 a week, right? So when the numbers were done pre-election, they were saying, well, I think CTU worked it out based on the numbers they were given, 3,000 families could get the full $250 a fortnight, $125. It's turned out to be a subset of the 249, because obviously 249 families are getting the full ECE, and you need to have the full ECE to then get the full $125 a week. So not all of those people who are getting the $75 a week ECE are then getting the full $125. So it's a subset of that. And in that RNZ story, it said 50 families are getting the full $250 a fortnight, $125 a week. 50, not 3,000, 50. Shocking, Fano, shocking. But you can see that's me and Craig hanging out social time. See, we're even political nerds in our downtime. We can't help it. He's more of a nerd than me. Let's just be real. He's a bigger nerd, but Nikki No Calculator says Gareth, and Kaimatara. Behold, 'tis Nicola Lockpenny, master of empty coffers and folly in figures. All right. That's that, team. We've got some other things we want to talk about as well. In fact, there's other things that we don't need to talk about, which we're going to talk about. So maybe I'll come back to them. There was a story on Q&A this weekend. It was actually a surprisingly short. And I was thinking, has this interview been done now? Or has it been done like 4 months ago? Because it was a very short chat with David Seymour. I think it must be done now. But they'd just done a whole bunch of information they looked at a whole lot of information about charter schools, yeah? Or maybe we just play the whole thing. Should we just play the whole thing? It's only 6 minutes in total. Maybe we can do that, can't we? Fine, no. Charter schools from Q&A in the weekend. There is a chat with David Seymour in the second half of it. The first half of it puts out the, what would you say? Puts out all the information around who is actually wanting charter schools. And the answer is far fewer groups than the government said. Government makes a prediction. Government said it's going to get to this many people. How many people? How many schools? Far fewer.
The biggest difference in the government's charter school policy from the last time that charter schools were in place is that as well as establishing new charter schools, state schools can now apply to convert into charter schools. Last year's budget...
I wonder why, though. Why would a state school convert? What would be the reason?
It included funding for up to 15 brand new charter schools and up to 35 state schools to convert.
So 50 in total, combination between 50 total.
Into charter schools over this year and next year. And millions of dollars in funding has been spent establishing a charter school agency which oversees the process. Charter schools are David Seymour's signature education policy, and in last year's
I thought school lunches were his signature education policy. Yeah.
budget, he announced $153 million in funding for charter schools over the next 4 years.
Altogether, the government in this budget will fund 15 new charter schools. It's also set aside funding for the conversion of 35 state schools.
7 brand new charter schools opened in term 1 this year, and 2 more are set to open by the start of next year. But the school rolls are really small, with just over 200 kids nationwide currently attending charter schools.
Did you get that far? No? I think that's quite an important fact. So $153 million, a new way of doing education, freedom for everyone, getting away from the bureaucracy, just doing it. It's going to be so good for the future of our kids. 200 children are in charter schools. 200.
More are set to open by the start of next year. But the school rolls are really small, with just over 200 kids nationwide currently attending charter schools. David Seymour has said there's huge demand for charter schools. So last month on Q&A we asked him for specific numbers. How many have applied to convert them for next year?
There's about a dozen who are currently in talks with the Ministry of Education.
Only a dozen?
Well, let's just see how it rolls out.
The deadline for expressions of interest for state schools to convert for term 1 next year initially passed a fortnight ago. But then, more than 24 hours later, on a Saturday night, the Charter School Agency announced on Facebook that it was actually extending the deadline, and it refused to tell Q&A how many expressions of interest it had received.
That's never a good sign, is it? How many are keen to come on board with you? Oh, we can't say that. If it was like 200, you bet your bottom dollar they'd be saying it.
The new extended deadline passed on Thursday, despite funding allocated for up to 35 schools to convert next year. Of the 2,500 state schools nationwide, just 6 submitted basic expressions of interest. Now, there are 2 conversions continuing from the first round of applications last year. But it means that even if all the state schools that have expressed interest are ultimately approved for conversions, which, judging by the process so far, would be unusual, a grand total of just 8 conversions would be approved for term 1 next year. So you have said there is huge demand for charter schools. Why don't...
Is it just me, or does David Seymour look like he's just rolled out of sleeping in a car overnight? I mean, no, this is actually no shade. It's just a very bizarre... He's had a really hard night, and he's just rolled up to Q&A first thing in the morning after a really hard night. You know what I'm saying?
You have said there is huge demand for charter schools. Why don't more schools want to convert?
I think a lot of people are testing the water. It's an unfamiliar concept, and there's a lot of opposition from the union leadership, maybe not the teachers themselves, but from unions. I think as it becomes better understood and more accepted, you're going to see more and more of them. But to have half a dozen well through the process right now, in what's really the first year, remember we only passed.
He said well through the process. The report said have shown interests. There's a bit difference with that. So there's depending what the truth between those two things are, have shown an interest, are well through the process, pretty different things they're saying.
The legislation at the end of last year. I reject the basic idea that there's too few or not enough. I think it's going quite well.
Half a dozen a long way through the process. I mean, they've merely expressed interest at this stage.
Thanks, Jack.
And of course, the funding in the last budget was allocated to establish the schools in 2025 and 2026. You had funding for up to 35 schools, and you've only got 8 that are currently under consideration for term 1 next year.
A couple of things about that. First of all, it's a 4-year budget cycle, right? So 35 is the maximum that we could establish.
But if you look at those budget documents, it's to establish the schools in 25 and 26, and then to continue to fund them over that 4-year cycle. I mean, you yourself have said they would be established in 25 and 26.
But if you look at how many we've got so far, we've got 7 schools operating. The first time that we created this policy, it actually took 5 years to get to 12. We will have exceeded that in the first 2.
Yeah, but then why did you put the number 35 out? See, this is the thing. If you're making the 35, what we do on this show is we will hold you accountable to both the level you held the last government accountable and the level you fucking set for yourself. You've said up to 35. You've said 25, 26, years 25, 26. You don't now go, well, yeah, but compared to the last time, we're doing pretty well. That's not what you said pre-election. Pre-election, if you had said, well, last time we got 7 in the first 5 years, anything better than that will be better, will be a plus. If you had said that, fair enough, but you didn't, Mr. Seymour. You said up to 35. You don't get the opportunity to now walk that back.
It actually took 5 years to get to 12. We will have exceeded that in the first 2 years. So it depends how you measure it. If you want to take the absolute maximum and say that's...
We measure it by the words you used and the promises you made. Do you not get that?
A target rather than a limit, then yeah, you can play that argument. But I think what is important is that you've got a whole lot of children who are getting a totally different education experience. You've got educators that are able to do things differently, and the numbers are growing. All of those things are positive. If you want to say that, because someone sets an ambitious limit, that they should somehow be punished for that, then you can, but I don't think that's going to make the boat go faster.
The Charter School Agency has spent most of the $10 million in establishment funding for what are a few hundred students in new charter schools and what is currently a very limited demand for charter school conversions. Is that good value for money?
Well, if you want to distort the policy, then probably not. But if you want to look at it honestly and say we're spending the same amount of money per child as they would have in the state system. Now, some people like to say, oh, I'm going to take the first couple of weeks and say, well, because you start small and then you grow your role, I can produce a figure that makes them look like they're funded more. Oh, we've seen all that argument, but that's not an honest one.
So he's not being honest. But now what Jack needs to do, what anyone needs to do, any reporter now needs to go is so we want some numbers for the next 12 months. You're basically saying, because you never gave a guarantee of numbers, you're basically saying, well, it's better than the last time. So now we need to know from Mr. Seymour, give us some tangible, concrete numbers that we can come back at the end of 2026, which is what you've said, as to what they're going to be, then we can measure it.
Way to talk about it. The fact is charter school students get the same funding over the term of their contract, which by the way is 10 years, as any other school. You want to play the game of trying to make sort of false calculations out of the first couple of weeks you can.
He's so slimy, eh? You want to play the game. He's that kid at school, right, that would have started a fight and then stepped behind the bigger kid. You know what I mean? It's just like, well, you want to have a go, do you? Come on, then let's have a go. As he slowly does a Homer Simpson backing out through the hedge while the bigger kid comes and stands in front of him. It's just gross.
But again, not really going to make the boat go faster.
Last time there were lots of Te Reo Māori schools, iwi-led schools, kura that were interested in being charter schools. This time, not so much at this point, at the very least. Do you think that your association with the Treaty Principles Bill has put off some schools that might otherwise have considered converting into charter schools?
Well,
at this
if it
stage?
has, you're dealing with people who are more interested in politics than the future and the welfare of children, in which case they might not have been the best people anyway. What we do know is you look at Tepene, you look at Te Rito, of the 7 schools currently open, 2 out of 7, so what's that, nearly 1 in 3, are actually very much kaupapa Māori schools, so that doesn't seem to be a problem.
Mr. Seymour. So charter schools are in high demand, except nobody wants them. Māori aren't interested in them because you've ruined the relationship and been a divisive force for the last 18 to 24 months. You're saying it's doing better than the last time round because the last time round it did atrociously, even though you were aiming for 15 new schools and up to 35 and you got 8. You know, it's just all nonsense. There's a technical term for it. It's just all horse shit. That's what it is. It's in the ballot. Thank you for your super chat. It says the public school that would switch to charter school likely have a head teacher who would support that change are likely ACT supporter / candidate. Man, I wonder how many that would be. I wonder how many like principals and stuff would be ACT voters. I think it would be a smaller amount, not none, but it'd be smaller. School lunches plus TPB plus charter school equals one big L. Lose, I guess, as opposed to lie. Kaimatara, $5 super chat. Thank you for your chat. People say he looks like Rimmer. I also see David Straussman's puppet Chuck Wood, and those cheeks here and how mechanical his mouth moves. To be honest, you know what I saw in that imagery as well? I'll go back to it, eh? Do you know what I saw in this imagery? It was like that. Can I get it? Can I get it just right? It's hard to try and get it just right. It's like this look here. What I saw, hang on, I'll just make it full screen. You know what I saw in that look? That there? That's Mr. Bean. That's what I see in that. There's a Mr. Bean vibe about him. And which is cool. I mean, we're just, taking the piss because it's fun. You're allowed to look like Mr. Bean, but Mr. Bean vibes, that's for sure. Whānau. It's been a really good show tonight, actually. Thanks to Barb. I wanted to show you one other thing. And this will, I think, we all know that the, I'll say far right, but I'll say right as well, hard right to hard right, are playing a silly culture wars game with, trans issues. And one of the biggest culture war games they play. And when we say culture wars, because there's a thing going around at the moment about some people going, oh, they're talking about imported culture wars. Well, whatever that is, what I'm saying is I'll give you a definition of what the culture war is about. The culture war is heavily focusing on issues that pretty much aren't legislatively necessary. They're not fixing the economy. They're not, they're side issues. If you don't like the term culture war, they're side issues. But one of those big, and they're like hot button topics for, QAnon followers. That's the kind of thing that I think of when I say culture war issues. Is trans women, and I say women purposefully, in bathrooms. I've got a clip to show you here. This lady is a Labour MP in the UK. There's someone else on the panel. I'm sure I can get a wide shot there. That guy there. He's a former Tory MP. So I know you all know this, but Sarah says sideshow is a good one too. So think Labour as in Labour, think Tory as in National, right? Easy way to do it. I mean, he's even wearing the same blue suit, the one that apparently you get given on the day one that you're a National MP, then you wear it for the next 3 to 9 years. We've said for a long time that the reason this is a culture war issue, as Sarah has said, a sideshow, is because when you start talking about, trans women in bathrooms, following that logical connection and completion, you then have to talk about trans men. And the idea being, if you're so sure that you want to put male at birth, who are trans women into the male bathrooms, then obviously that means you need to put female at birth, trans men, into female bathrooms. which means you are basically, and look, I've just taken a snapshot. There you go. There are some trans men. So these men are now going into the women's bathrooms because following their logic, female at birth, trans men. Now, we've been asking this question for a couple of years now. I want to play you a clip. And it's not funny because the issue is horrific and serious, and it is just basically demeaning people. I want to play you a clip where this former Tory MP gets educated what a trans man is and then finds out in real time how his concern around trans women in bathrooms is a sideshow and won't work. Have a look at this.
I think if you look at Bridget Philipson's interview with Times Radio, sorry for mentioning a rival show, in
We're confident enough.
June last year, quite right, where she was saying that under her preferred interpretation of the law, trans women should use women's bathrooms. That wasn't the position she was adopting during the election campaign. And the reality is Labour shadow ministers, as they then were repeatedly unable to give a straight answer to the question of both what is a woman.
Which is hilarious because he doesn't know what a trans man is, which he demonstrates very quickly. He doesn't know what a trans man is.
And whether trans women should be using women's only spaces. In that sense, I'm afraid, it just doesn't wash to say that there has been consistency because there hasn't been.
Right, but there has been. And what we have to do now is talk about the protections of trans women and trans men who are often left out of the debate. And actually, I think within this debate, I actually think we shouldn't have debates anymore without a trans man or a trans woman being included in the debate, because it's always talking about them without them. And in regards to bathrooms, which is always this sort of vexed issue, what really concerns me is that, I'm
already salivating, but you wait. You wait for the silence. It's just gold.
Trans women should, in my opinion, of course, still continue to use women's bathrooms. They can't.
That's literally not what the law says.
But Hank, let me just
that's the whole point
talk
of this
through.
ruling.
Safe spaces. There's not been a safe space is a safe space. I do not police people in public toilets. And I think that's where we're getting to as society, in policing what a woman looks like. You know, I have a butch lesbian friend who gets hounded out of women's toilets, and it is heartbreaking to the point where we have to escort her into the toilet because she's going to be hounded out, and we need to stop that. And what concerns me about the toilet debate is if trans men then have to use women's toilets, that's going to make women less safe, because how are you going to stop a man, a normal man, going into a woman's toilets and saying, I'm a trans man? And so I think we have to look at
I don't follow that logic.
Why? Why don't
because
we?
So just so you're clear, in case you missed it, he said, I don't follow that logic, right? So he doesn't understand.
I don't follow that logic.
Why? Why don't
because the point is that we're saying that people who are biologically men shouldn't be using women's toilets. That's the point of this ruling, among other things.
But a trans man is biologically a woman.
Someone who's transitioned from being a woman to a man is...
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
I think this...
And that's the problem. That is the problem, and that's what concerns me.
I'll be honest, this is something that we can talk about an awful lot more and debate an awful lot more, and I thank both of you for doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah, it's a genuinely contentious one.
Yeah, let's go to the break now. Really interesting to get your views on this as well.
Did you see the look of the host? Watch this.
We can talk about an awful lot more and debate an awful lot more, and I thank both of you for doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah, it's a genuinely
Now, just so you know, so, I mean, look, I don't need to educate you guys, right? I'm preaching to the choir. If you're the person who is saying, and I'll just use the terms born at birth, that male at birth needs to be in the male bathroom, then that dictates female at birth needs to be in the female bathroom. We've been talking about it for 2 years. You just saw it break this guy's brain. I thought, how can I show you this one more time and make it be even sort of more appropriately accurate. And so I did a little bit of adding of sounds to it. So this is probably clear for you.
But a trans man is biologically a woman.
Someone who's transitioned from being a woman to a man is...
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
I think this...
It's that puff at the end. It's at the end. I know, you probably all knew crickets were coming. There was a lot of crickets too there because there was a lot of space for those crickets to happen. Okay, whānau, I just want to remind you again, if you want to support a local content creator, Hori's out there at the moment. I'm wearing one of his t-shirts. I paid for it full price. It's not like a mates rates thing. Very cool artwork as well. He's an artist. I'm a content creator, don't get it right. He's an artist. And the hori.co.nz, get out there and support your local artist. If you want to be a part of what we do, of course you can be a Patreon. Of course you can visit the merch store as well, which have still got those rainbow buffers in there. I'm going to go to the post shop tomorrow. If you've made an order in that first week, which is actually 2 weeks ago now, it's a bit longer than we thought. I apologise because we had Anzac Day and Easter Monday in 1 week, which kept our delivery sort of away from us a lot for longer than we wanted. So I am sorry about that. Other than that, team, I think I'm going to leave you on one more thing because I saw this the other day. Billy Eichner, I don't know too much about him. Good dude, bad dude, right politics, wrong politics, I've got no idea. But he did a very funny bit in the street where he was saying immigrant or real American. So let's play this as the last thing for tonight before we head off. A game with Billy Eichner about immigrant or American.
Here we go, Kevin. Immigrant or real American? If you get enough right, you have a prize to take home to Alex. Here we go. Immigrant or real American? And away we go. Mila Kunis. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Jeffrey Dahmer. Real American. Yes, correct. Pierce Brosnan. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Charles Manson. A real American. Yes, correct. Salma Hayek. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Gloria Estefan. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Ted Bundy. Real American. Yes, correct. Charlize Theron. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Antonio Banderas. Immigrant. Yes, correct. The Unabomber. Real American. Yes, correct. Craig Ferguson. He's an immigrant. Yes, he is. Lee Harvey Oswald. Real American. Yes, correct. The Boston Strangler. Oh, God. Real American. Yes, correct. Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. He's an immigrant. Yes, he is. Timothy McVeigh. Real American. Yes, he is. Natalie Portman. She's an immigrant. Yes, she is. Jackie Chan. Immigrant. Yes, correct. Casey Anthony. She's a real American. Yes, she is. Carlos Santana. He's an immigrant. Yes, correct. Albert Einstein. He is an immigrant. Yes, he was. O.J. Simpson. Real American. Yes, correct.
That's very funny. And please, I hope Billy Eichner doesn't have a worldwide block on that. We have to go through all that nonsense again. Okay, team. Thanks for being a part of the show tonight. Thanks for being involved. And if she's still watching or if she picks up on it, thanks, Barb, for being a part of the show tonight. Chewie is held up or caught up tonight in some family celebratories, so we won't, I think we'll probably see him tomorrow, but we'll see how that all pans out. Before we head off, can I say a huge thanks to some new patrons. Now, I think I might have announced some of you guys last week, but I will just say it once again, to AAB, to Gabrielle Butler, to Arya Black, to King Con, to Tom, who I think is a newbie, to Bede Martin, like the name, middle name, Patrick Bede, father's name, nephew's name, Bede Martin, rock and roll, and to SK, who all became patrons during this week. It's been fun. It's been a fun one tonight. I honestly, if you don't know quite how this works, I now stay up for an hour to an hour and a half and I edit all those clips down and I load them up to go out tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm saying to you, Mr. Luxon, what I would like to say to you is that those clips with Barb, when I say clips, the full episodes, I make shorter clips as we go through the week. But those clips with Barb and with Craig Renney will be available to be shared tomorrow. I urge you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and to hit the notification bell, because those are the kinds of things that need to get lots of views. They should be leading the mainstream news channels tomorrow. They probably won't. TVNZ Breakfast. TVNZ Breakfast has the Prime Minister on a Tuesday morning. They probably won't, right? So it's up to us. So if you agree with me and you think that's a big news story and it needs to get out there, then subscribe to whatever you're watching us on right now. And those clips, those episode clips, long form will be going out on Facebook and will be going out on YouTube. Shorter form clips through the week will go out on Twitter and other places as well. All right, team. Love you to bits. And I guess I will see you, I'm assuming with Chewie, tomorrow night for another episode of Big Hairy News.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
It's a bit crazy, Tim. I just had a little moment there while I was reading through the things. This is a crazy thing we're doing, eh? All of us together. This is crazy. Like, this was a show tonight with news and information and fun and an opinion and stuff in there as well. This is crazy. There used to be roadblocks to this kind of stuff that had involved a studio and $1 million camera and a producing team, and now we just get to all hang out in the evening and talk news and politics and hopefully try and spread the good word. It's pretty crazy. This thing's pretty crazy. I'm just having a bit of a moment here. It's pretty crazy, all of us hanging out together doing this. It's pretty crazy we get to now try and share this news around and what's going on. Amazing. All right, team. I'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 o'clock for another episode of Big Hairy News. Hooroo!